It was about 2 years ago that I saw someone share an image on social media of a bunch of different outfits, and my wife had said, "Oh, this looks like what I wear," and at the top it said "Dark Academia." And I was really curious about exactly what that was at the time, and I had done a quick Google search, and I found a number of results. When this was when this thing was first starting, and what I found was a community largely of Zoomers, so people a bit younger than I am, sharing images of old universities and sharing images of clothing, particularly clothing that was associated with the academy in one way or another. And I noticed that a lot of people dress like I do in these images. So I was really curious about exactly what this whole thing is. And I've always been interested in kind of subcultures as well, because I'm always wanting to kind of engage subcultures and the inherent kind of desires that form those. And I say this as one who was very much part of subcultures when I was younger. I was part of the punk rock subculture, and then the whole scenester thing happened when I was in high school, and I was part of that as well. But something I've seen with Zoomers now is that these kind of subcultures that have started to grow and get a lot of influence online are not so much about music per se, as really was the dominant aspect of any real subculture when I was a teenager and when I was in college. But they really surround aesthetics, so personal tastes and looks and outfits. And music is certainly a part of the aesthetic desire, but it's not the entirety of it. It's not really surrounding music, but it's kind of this whole big picture of what people enjoy and what they kind of desire for their life to be like. And so dark academia, if you're not familiar with it, is one of these aesthetics that it's a lot on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and kind of all over the place on various social media platforms, that glorifies images of really Western European and Northeastern U.S. universities. So Ivy League campuses, Oxford, you'll see these kind of images, and people wearing clothing that is academically oriented in one way or another, along with things like classical music. And then there's this whole like dark element to it as well. So they like novels like The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which I read out of curiosity, which was a bit over the top, but so there's this like whole dark element. And I'm just curious about these kind of things, and always looking at what is it that drives people to desire the things that they do? What is it that drives people to these kinds of subcultures or a desire for beauty? And ultimately, I think it's kind of telling that this has grown so much as a subculture and as an aesthetic. And there's been so much discussion about this in the last couple years. And I think it really shows a lack of what people don't have in our culture. And essentially what we don't have in our culture is beauty. And you see that what's driving people right now in their interest in what they spend their time doing is a search for beauty, something that feels like it has meaning, something that is transcendent, something that's not just this continual mechanical production that we're constantly used to, or just the noise that surrounds us at all times as we just hear repetitious pop music every single place we go, and we spend our days looking at screens and cut off from other people. And so with the rise of mass production, now it's been quite a while since we've been there, but the fruits of that, I think, the lack of meaning that has just been part of the modern world, really is showing itself in people desiring to find some kind of meaning, something beyond themselves somewhere. And so people are very much recognizing that the place where modern culture is just lacking in anything purposeful. And we simply cannot function as human beings, seeing ourselves simply as biological machines here to make money, or here to just simply reproduce and continue the species, or whatever it might be. We're not oriented to do that. And it has, of course, traditionally been religion that has taken that place, and rightly so. As a theologian, I would certainly say that it should, because ultimately this inherent desire that is within us for beauty, this desire that is in us for meaning, is something that can only be fulfilled in God, who is the source of those things, who created us with those inherent desires and bent toward him, toward the transcendent. And when that's taken out of the picture, we can't function without that. So the only thing that's left for us to do is to create meaning or create purpose or create beauty or look for it somewhere, because that's just what we do. That is what we are made to do. And so I think this is an expression of that. People rightly recognizing just how modernity has fallen short, and the loss of any religious, in any traditional sense, notion in our culture. People are just looking for meaning and purpose in other places. And this is why you have, I think, such a rise in the social justice movements. It's a desire to have an ethical system. It's a desire to be part of something that is purposeful. It's a desire to be righteous or something, to be part of a cause that is righteous and good. And it's inevitable that when secularization occurs in a society, there's going to just be something that replaces that, because we cannot live as secular creatures. We are religious beings inherently. So what I think you see in the dark academia aesthetic, and others as well, you have cottagecore and light academia, and it seems like there's tons of these. I mean, probably hundreds of the specific little categories. But I think what you see is this is the inevitable result of a generation that has no grounding in anything transcendent whatsoever, no meaning, no purpose. And so they're looking for it somewhere. And I think when you do see say the beauty of classical architecture, or you see the beauty in classical music, which people are listening to in this subculture, which is a wonderful thing, or you see the beauty in classic literature, or whatever it might be, you're encountering something that is beyond yourself. You're encountering something that transcends the moment. And what we have in just popular entertainment is the moment. That's all we have. Whatever is cool now, whatever is the topic of discussion today, is not going to be the topic of discussion tomorrow. And whatever is trendy now is not going to be trendy 10 years from now, because everything is disposable. If nothing is purposeful, everything is disposable, because nothing is lasting. And so when people are grabbing onto, I think, these images of things that are old, and by old we're talking, well, some of it's 100 years old, 200 years old, but some of it we're talking about, I think, the culture of ancient Greece. I mean, there really is this desire to say, we need something rooted, we need something historic, and this is simply how it's coming out. Now, I do think it's a bit ironic watching the people that get engaged in this movement, because it seems like there are a couple kind of conflicting ideas inherent within it. And one is that a lot of the people who are interested in dark academia, on the one hand, they love classical Western European culture. And they love the beauty inherent in a lot of classical Western European culture. But on the other hand, these are it's the same generation, the same culture that often is very critical of Western European culture, and is often fearful of white supremacy and these kind of things that are inherent to the West. In their view, that is inherent to the identity of the West. And so you kind of see these conflicting narratives showing up there. It's like they want to appreciate the classical West, but then on the other hand, the classical West has to be the villain. And I think that's really kind of impossible to make those two things make sense together. Of course, ultimately, I think what people should see is, like any culture, there is good and bad. You can't paint one culture, Western European culture, as just the enemy or defined by its acts of atrocities, which of course there are, and not to downplay real atrocities, but that's the nature of sinful culture. All of it, doesn't matter what it is. And you can find beauty in those things, regardless of what errors you can point out. And you can find horrific atrocities in any culture that's ever existed, in any culture that will exist, because there's this whole sin thing that messes all of us up. But anyway, those are just some kind of scattered thoughts. They're just some things that I've been thinking about, and I tweeted about it a little while ago, and someone said, "Oh, you should make a video about this." So anyway, there you go. If you do want to learn more about these subjects, especially the topic of beauty, you can check out my book, In Defense of the True, the Good, and the Beautiful, on the loss of transcendence and the decline of the West. You can find that at jspublishing.org, which is our publishing house. You can also just order it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or wherever. Anyway, we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.